70, a short time later, it wasn't 70 years, the people began to return. 70 years after the temple was destroyed, the people of Judea had started significantly to come back and to rebuild the temple. And so this period between the 17th day of Tammuz and the 9th day of Av is forever etched in our memories, because not only was that the period during which the beginning of the end took place for the first temple, but also the beginning of the end took place for the second temple. 17th day of Tammuz, the walls of Jerusalem, the walls that we thought were impenetrable, the walls that we had painstakingly worked so hard to create so massively. Anybody looking at the walls around the Temple Mount could only begin to imagine just how powerful the walls were. We felt so secure behind those walls. And on the 17th day of Tammuz, the walls were breached. They were breached by incredible forces, hitherto unknown. There had never been people who could breach such powerful walls. But the Romans used a new technique called a battering ram. And the battering ram, continuously pushed by hundreds of slaves and soldiers, pressed against single points in the wall again and again and again till it loosened those huge stones that had been placed there and caused them to fall apart and make a breach in the wall. And so, the 17th day of Tammuz remembers this event, the breakdown of the wall. What kind of a wall are we talking about? There are two kinds of walls. There's a wall like the Great Wall of China. You can see today around Jerusalem, there's the wall around the Holy City. There's a wall around the Temple Mount area. There's a wall around the Holy City. These walls were constructed to prevent unwanted people from entering into the sacred land. Then there's another kind of wall, like the Berlin Wall. The intent there is not for outsiders, to prevent outsiders from coming in, but rather to prevent insiders from going out. It's a different type of wall, also tragic, and that wall also came tumbling down. And it was hailed in its day in 1990 as the onset, the beginning of freedom for Europe, freedom from communist oppression. But the question is, what do these walls teach us? The answer is, we have to make a barrier within ourselves to prevent unwanted things from entering into our domain. And then we have to create a barrier also to prevent unwanted things from going out from our domain outside. What am I talking about? We live in a time where the human body is extolled as well as abused. The sheer exposure of body parts that you could see on television and in the movies and in advertisements is unbelievable. What is the purpose of showing off a female body to men or a male body to females? The purpose is to arouse sexual passions that, for the most part, are unnecessary. The reason for a wall is to prevent things that are unwanted from coming into your domain. What is the wall that a Jew should create for himself? Is a wall around one's eyes, a wall around one's ears, and a wall to one's mouth. We have to prevent ourselves from receiving images that are inappropriate because they arouse things that are unnecessary and create an artificial process as if human sexuality is like buying candy. The net result of that kind of behavior and that kind of a breakdown of the walls of decency is that you have promiscuity, the diseases associated with promiscuity, you have children born out of wedlock, and nowadays, children born out of wedlock are celebrated. Oh, so-and-so's having a baby. With whom? With one of her multiple boyfriends. She doesn't even know who the father is, quite often. When you have human sexuality displayed in such a way, you have the breakdown of morality in the most basic way. What is the net result? The net result causes an abuse of the privilege of sexuality to the point where children are secondary to one's pleasure. And in fact, what we have is a society which kills more babies than babies are born. You have a situation in Europe where there are less children born than replacements of the population. Europe has gone the route of atheism, destroyed the European standards of decency, and essentially committed its own suicide. For you see, if Europe can't replace its children, then the Muslims, who hate the Europeans and the Western culture that they represent, and the democratic institutions that they have established, and the higher centers of learning, the radical Muslims will inherit Europe without having to go to war. All because they failed to make a wall in front of their eyes.